In the market to buy your first home? Well, here are some tips to survive your first home purchase. One is just get your financial house in order, pun intended, before ever thinking about buying a home. So this includes understanding your budget, understanding your finances, understanding how much down payment you have, understanding what your credit scores are between yourself, your spouse, or whoever you're buying your home with, your partner, etc. And these are all important things. So first and foremost, credit score. Your credit score is going to be super important when purchasing a house. And the reason for that is your credit score is going to determine the interest rate that you get on your mortgage. That interest rate could be the difference between hundreds of thousands of dollars in total costs for purchasing the home, because the interest rate basically is on the entire mortgage. So if you have $1 million mortgage, which some people in California do, that's going to really add up over time and cost you a boatload of money. So make sure your credit score is good. And there's a lot of things you can do to increase your credit score. That's going to be outside the scope of this video. But basically, if your credit score is below 750, you should be doing some work on it. And that's whether it's you or your spouse. You want to do things to make sure you're making sure that your credit score is as high as possible, whether that's paying down debt, making sure all payments are on time, locking down your credit score to prevent any fraud, anything like that. Next, you want to make sure you understand your budget well before ever going into purchasing a home. So your home is obviously going to be expensive. You're going to have a mortgage payment. But beyond that, you're going to have things like air conditioners break down, pipes burst, all these different things that can unexpectedly happen when you have your own home. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that you can afford the monthly payments. There's a lot of mortgage calculators online, and so you want to make sure you use those mortgage calculators to see what your monthly expense is going to be. And there's a lot of rules of thumb out there, but good rule of thumb is either you want that monthly payment to be 28% or lower of your gross income, or 36% or lower of your net income, so after taxes. So if that's the case, then that means you can probably afford the house, at least from a monthly payment perspective. So on top of understanding your budget, you want to make sure you have things like emergency savings and down payments set up. So you can do a lower down payment, but the lower down payment you have, the higher your monthly costs are going to be, because you have things like mortgage insurance if you have under a 20% down payment, plus you'll just have more interest and bigger loan. So make sure you have a down payment ready. The rule of thumb is to have 20% as your first down payment. That being said, again, you can do much lower, but you'll just want to make sure the cost benefit is there. So beyond that, you want to make sure you have emergency funds, and make sure you have emergency funds above and beyond what you think you actually need, because as you will find out if you're buying your first home, there's always going to be significantly more expenses than just the down payment. So you're going to have things like moving costs, furniture costs, all sorts of different things like that. And basically, you end up spending 20, 30, 40, 50% more than you actually expected from your down payment. So always make sure you have more than just the emergency funds you need, because you don't want to be in a situation where you pay your cash goes out for your down payment, you have all these moving costs, etc., and then as soon as you move in, pipe bursts, and now you need money from somewhere to fix your home. So long story short, make sure you have emergency funds in place, because it's a nightmare to deal with. I can tell you this from firsthand experience. Luckily, we had the savings in place, but we moved in our house, and 6 months later, a pipe burst as we were having our first child. And so, a lot of expenses happen all at once. So making sure you're prepared for those type of things is super important, because life happens. Another tip is figure out the wants and needs of your house. So buying a house is an expensive endeavor. And housing values, even though you don't always see it, they do fluctuate in value up and down. So you don't want to be in a position where you have to move because you didn't buy a house that had all the things that you needed for a growing family, etc. Or a lot of people buy a starter home with the idea of, hey, I'm gonna live here for a couple of years and then I'm going to move out. Well, one, every time you move, there's going to be about a 6% charge just for the seller and buyer commissions. Plus you have transaction costs, titling costs, mortgage costs, all these different things that are cost to that move. So any appreciation or anything like that you get in your house may just be lost because of those costs. But also, if you didn't get any appreciation, you may just be paying those things out of pocket and spending a lot more money than you necessarily need to. You really don't get an ROI on your home unless you're staying there like 8 to 10 years. So kind of keep that in mind as you're buying your house. So think about all the wants and needs you might need for the next 10 years and make sure it's a house you're going to want to live in for the next 10 years. Otherwise, it might make more sense to rent until you understand those things that you do want. Also, don't solely buy based on the market. So I guess even backtracking here, your home is not an investment. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Your home is not an investment. It is an expense. So don't ever think of it as an investment, because you're never going to sell your home, or it's very unlikely that you're going to sell your home to capture that money for it to be an investment. So it is an expense. Treat it that way. So don't buy based on the market. Buy based on your affordability, the lifestyle you want, and things that you want to live in. Otherwise, financially and data-wise, it's always going to make more sense to just rent and invest elsewhere. So don't buy based on the market. Buy based on your wants and desires. Next, work with a real estate agent, but interview several real estate agents before you're committing to one, because not every real estate agent is created equal. You'll have the real estate agents that are definitely sort of in it for themselves, where, if you're a buyer, they're going to not really negotiate for you because that lowers their commission. So you want to make sure you have an honest real estate agent that's going to be really working in your best interest and getting you a value that actually fits the market. So, and having a real estate agent that understands the market is also going to be super important. So when you work with a real estate agent, interview several before committing to just one, and ask a bunch of questions on their experience, how they typically negotiate, what things they know about the market, upcoming trends in the market, reasons, best neighborhoods to buy in. All these different things are going to show their level of knowledge within the market, and really seeing like, hey, how do you typically negotiate on my behalf? Or how do you, make an offer on a property? Or how do you think about making an offer on a property? Asking these questions in advance is going to give you an idea of how they think about things, and then you can do that before committing, because most real estate agents are going to make you commit to 3 to 6 months as like a sort of a non-compete. It's sort of a standard practice that at least I've seen. But so make sure you interview a lot of real estate agents before you make that commitment. The next tip, and kind of final tip for now, is make sure you craft your offer carefully. So it can often be easy to get caught up in emotion and make a offer that just sucks, or not be super serious with sticking to your guns. But make sure you have an inspection with every single offer. It's become a common practice to waive an inspection just because houses are flying off the shelf. That being said, always, always, always have an inspection. That I've seen so many situations where people just get screwed because they didn't do an inspection. And it's not necessarily that the seller was malicious in their intent, but it's just, a lot of times homeowners don't know that things wrong with their own properties because they're not contractors, or they're not home inspectors themselves. We found this with our own property, where we even had an inspection, but we had problems like the pipe bursting that I mentioned before. But when we hired plumbers to come fix that pipe, he's like, oh yeah, that should have never passed an inspection. So make sure you hire an inspector, and hire a good one, a well-rated one, etc. Don't necessarily just trust the recommendation of your real estate agent. I love our real estate agent, but that's what we did, and come to find out the inspector wasn't very good. So make sure you're hiring an inspector that is well vetted, and make sure you're always hiring one whenever you make an offer, no questions asked, and have contingencies in your offer that are important to you. So for example, I'm super allergic to mold, so we put in our offer that we can back out no matter what if there's any mold, not just hey, mold was there but it's been taken care of. If there's any mold in the house, boom, done. Offers off the table. So make sure you kind of think through and talk with your real estate agent on what things that you're willing to put up with, what things you're willing to give in on, but always make sure that you are very thoughtful with how you make that offer. And because the market, especially as the recording of this video, is pretty crazy, make sure you think of those things ahead of time before ever actually making an offer. That way you can still put an offer in quickly and aren't going back and forth trying to make these decisions. Understand what decisions you need to make, work with your real estate agent to do that, make those decisions ahead of time, get your pre-approvals on your mortgages ahead of time so you again know how much money you can afford and are ready for that offer. If you have all these things in place ahead of time, making that offer is going to be very easy. Hopefully you found all this stuff valuable. So if you're in the market for your first home, that's an awesome and exciting time, but there are a lot of things that can go wrong and a lot of things you can do that can ultimately end up as very expensive decisions. So make sure you're being very careful and thoughtful with those decisions and treating it as an expense and something that an expense that you could be stuck with for a very long time. So make sure you're, again, being very thoughtful with that decision. Until next time, cheers.